Welcome to the Tim Booker channel, where wisdom deserves to be shared. Wishing you an enjoyable listening experience. The book I'll be interpreting for you today is called Uniquely Human, with a subtitle, A Different Way of Seeing Autism. If you've ever paid attention to or interacted with autistic children, you may have noticed something unique about them. Despite not being deaf, they often seem oblivious to the outside world. For example, when called by their names, they show no reaction. During playtime, they prefer only one or two specific toys, and they don't engage with others. They play by themselves for hours on end. Additionally, these children may possess reasonably normal language abilities but are reluctant to speak. Typically, most children start attempting to speak around the age of 1, but many autistic children may not express a desire to speak even by the age of 2 or 3. And when they do speak, it's often challenging for them to express their feelings and thoughts clearly, sometimes repeating what others have said. These behaviors, as per the diagnostic criteria outlined in the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, can be broadly categorized into two groups: social communication and interaction difficulties, and restricted interests and repetitive behaviors, which are two hallmark features of autism. Children displaying these symptoms are not rare. They are scattered among us like stars, leading solitary lives in their own nighttime sky. Hence, they are often referred to as children from the stars. While this name sounds beautiful, for families, it can feel like burdens placed upon them, both financially and emotionally. Some people mistakenly believe that autistic children are more likely to become geniuses. In reality, around 70% of autistic children have lower than average intelligence, and they struggle with basic life skills. Currently, there is no cure for autism. Some parents seek experts to help with their children's rehabilitation, while others even give up their careers to care for their children at home. They live with anxiety, worrying about their child's future, often lamenting, "You're not grown up yet, how can I grow old?" Perhaps this book, Uniquely Human, can help alleviate the anxiety and helplessness experienced by these parents. Dr. Barry M. Prizant, the author, is a renowned international expert in autism with over 40 years of teaching, research, and clinical experience. In 2005, he received the Lifetime Achievement Award in Autism Research from the Princeton University Eaton Foundation. In this book, Dr. Prizant presents a new perspective on understanding autistic children. Since its publication, it has received widespread acclaim and is considered a groundbreaking work that represents a significant turning point in contemporary autism research and intervention. The author believes that so-called autistic behaviors should not be simplistically viewed as pathological manifestations that must be eliminated but rather as strategies that autistic children employ to cope with a chaotic and confusing world. What we need to change is not them but our way of understanding them and how we approach their behaviors. For the general public, the author aims to open our eyes, ears, and hearts through this book, helping us better understand the language of these children and appreciate and cherish their unique qualities. Because it's the societal environment formed by each one of us, our attitudes, and our understanding of these children that truly determine the quality of life and happiness for autistic individuals. Perhaps, with a little more patience, understanding, and acceptance, we can light the way for these children from the stars, preventing them from getting lost in panic and confusion. Next, I will delve into the two typical characteristics outlined in the autism diagnostic criteria: social communication and interaction difficulties, as well as restricted interests and repetitive behaviors, to explore the truth behind these behaviors. Let's take a look at the first typical characteristic of autism: social communication and interaction difficulties. Autism, also known as autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is called a spectrum because there is significant variability in how individuals with autism present themselves. However, there is one common thread: children with autism often face challenges in interpersonal interactions, to varying degrees. Some children may not even be aware of the existence of social rules. For instance, there's an example in the book of parents taking their son, Philip, to the movies. While waiting in line, Philip excitedly pointed at people in the queue and said, "That's a fat person, that's a thin one, that woman is tall, and that old man is fat." Philip didn't realize that his actions made others uncomfortable. He just wanted to showcase the new vocabulary he had learned at school. On the other hand, some children are aware of the existence of social rules and expectations. However, navigating this complex social world requires great effort, and their self-esteem can easily be bruised. For instance, there's the story of a 10-year-old boy named Ned. He knew that raising his hand in class was the proper way to answer questions, so he would make an effort to suppress his urge to blurt out the answers. But the teacher couldn't call on him every time. So, when Ned raised his hand and wasn't called on, he would become extremely anxious and angry. After weeks of practice, Ned finally understood that raising his hand didn't guarantee being called on. However, even then, he would loudly say, "Even though I raise my hand, the teacher may not call on me." He didn't realize that it was unnecessary to verbalize these rules, just following them sufficed. Why are these children with autism not adept at social interactions? We know that humans are social beings, and social skills stem from our instincts. However, the development of this instinct seems to face considerable challenges in children with autism. Firstly, they may not be as interested in social interactions. Brain imaging studies of individuals with autism have shown that the parts of their brains responsible for social motivation are less active than in typical individuals. Additionally, when people pay attention to nonverbal cues like gestures and facial expressions, the part of the brain responsible for processing auditory and visual stimuli becomes more active. However, in autistic individuals, this response to nonverbal cues is not as strong. There's an intriguing experiment mentioned in a book called The New Science of Autism that illustrates this. In one experiment, there were two participants in an empty room, a child with autism and a typical child. They played with Play-Doh while researchers occasionally played sounds, such as clapping or calling names, representing social sounds, and sounds like clock ticking or a horn honking, representing non-social sounds. Researchers recorded how often each child paid attention to these different sounds. After dozens of trials, they found that nearly all children with autism paid significantly less attention to social sounds compared to their typically developing peers. Furthermore, when children with autism were shown pictures and videos of faces, researchers made another astonishing discovery. Typically, when people view pictures and videos of faces, they tend to focus more on the eyes because they convey more social information. However, children with autism paid similar attention to the eyes and other facial features like the chin or mouth. To them, a face was not significantly different from a complex geometric shape. Now, imagine a child who lacks a strong social drive and doesn't pay much attention to social cues like facial expressions. What happens over time? They gradually lose the ability to interpret and understand social information accurately. Indeed, scientific research suggests that the part of the brain responsible for processing social information in children with autism is different from that in typical individuals. As a result, children with autism may struggle to accurately predict the actions, thoughts, or feelings of others. In the field of psychology, there's a classic experimental paradigm designed to explore children's levels of social cognitive development. Researchers present participating children with a story. One day, a boy placed some chocolates into a blue box and then went out to play. During his absence, the boy's mother moved the chocolates from the blue box to a green one. At this point, researchers asked the children in the experiment, when the boy comes back and wants to eat chocolates, which box will he look in? Typically, children around 4.5 years old understand that because the boy didn't witness the transfer, he will search in the original blue box. However, many autistic children aged 5 or older believe that the boy will look in the green box because they are aware that the chocolates were moved and assume the boy in the story knows this as well. This demonstrates that they cannot yet grasp or anticipate that others' perspectives may differ from their own. Autistic children struggle to understand and predict the actions and thoughts of others. Coupled with the fact that social situations are constantly changing and unpredictable, we can imagine the intense anxiety and fear they often experience. Consider this: if you were placed in an environment filled with uncertainty, where you had little control over the situation, how would you feel? Would you perhaps experience extreme anxiety and fear? Exactly, this is the emotional state that autistic children frequently experience. They don't know whom to trust, what others will do next, and every moment feels like opening an unpredictable box. It's crucial to understand this point. Once we do, we realize that many of the peculiar behaviors exhibited by autistic children during interactions with others are actually coping strategies for dealing with anxiety and fear. For instance, in a school setting, if a teacher or peer approaches an autistic child to greet them, the child might instinctively withdraw or avoid contact. While this may appear to create an awkward situation, it's essential to recognize that autistic children do this because they cannot predict the other person's intentions. They don't know whether the person is coming to harm them or offer a friendly hug. Due to their inability to quickly and accurately comprehend others' actions, these unpredictable behaviors are perceived as threats, prompting a self-protective response. However, even when we understand this, there can still be misunderstandings. The most common misunderstanding is the belief that autistic children do not have a need to build relationships with others. The author argues against this misconception. In fact, for many autistic children, being in the company of important individuals can help them better regulate their emotions. Sometimes, an autistic child's emotional outbursts occur because a specific person, especially a family member who is with them every day, is not present. The book mentions a 7-year-old boy named Gilmer who repeatedly asked his teacher if his mother was at home. Not receiving an answer from the teacher made Gilmer extremely anxious. His questioning grew louder and more urgent. In such situations, the best approach is not to immediately stop what may seem like a breach of classroom discipline but to patiently and repeatedly reassure the child. Yes, your mom is at home. You'll see her after school. Once they feel secure, their anxiety gradually subsides. All right, after discussing the reasons behind social communication and interaction difficulties, the next question to address is, what should parents or teachers do when faced with autistic children who have these social challenges? The book lists many methods, but here I'll highlight the two most important ones. First, communication should be direct, and second, proper emotional education should be provided. As we mentioned earlier, autistic children tend to interpret others' words literally, but in daily life, we often speak indirectly, leading to unexpected situations. For example, if a child answers a phone call and the caller asks, "Is your mom at home?" and the child responds with, "Yes, she's at home," and then hangs up, it can be perplexing. To avoid such issues, when communicating with autistic children, it's crucial to be straightforward and avoid beating around the bush. While with typical children, we can use more subtle language to make requests, such as saying, "Those snacks look good, don't they?" But with an autistic child, it's best to state things directly, like saying, "Please help me get a snack." Speaking directly doesn't mean the conversation ends there, it's also important to perform comprehension checks. In simple terms, even if we believe we've been clear, it's essential to confirm whether the child truly understands. Otherwise, situations like the following can occur. Parents instruct their child that in emergencies, they should dial 911 for help. The next day, after dinner, the child wants to eat ice cream, and the mother says no. The child then dials 911 and tells the operator, "There's an emergency here, my mom won't give me ice cream no matter what." If the parents had clearly outlined specific examples of emergencies when teaching the child, such a situation could likely have been prevented. Of course, besides being direct, parents or teachers should also introduce some common idiomatic expressions to help autistic children better integrate into society. Expressions like, "It's a piece of cake," can be confusing to autistic children, and in such cases, parents and teachers should patiently explain the meaning. Understanding social rules, others' thoughts, and emotions is not the most challenging part, it's actually comprehending and expressing one's own emotions. There's a well-known livestock design expert in the United States named Temple Grandin, who is also autistic. Once, a reporter asked her, "How do you feel right now?" We know this question is about one's mood or thoughts, but Temple Grandin responded with a detailed description of how she felt itchy all over when wearing a woolen sweater. In other words, she answered with a sensory experience. In situations like this, what's needed is proper emotional education. The author in the book mentions that many parents and teachers make common mistakes. For example, some parents or teachers try to teach autistic children to recognize various facial expressions using charts. They might label one expression as happy and another as sad. This approach often doesn't work because autistic children, due to their social communication and interaction challenges, find it abstract and difficult to describe emotions using words. A better and simpler approach is to provide the child with the appropriate emotion word when they are experiencing a particular emotion. For example, when a child is playing a game with joy and deep involvement, you can tell them, "What you're feeling right now is called happiness," and then encourage the child to experience and express that emotion. This is the correct way to teach emotions. Alright, let's now discuss the second typical feature of autistic children, narrow interests and repetitive behaviors. Everyone has their own hobbies and interests, and people naturally engage in conversations about topics they're passionate about. Autistic children are no exception. They develop various interests, but some of these interests may seem peculiar to us. For example, they might have a strong interest in toilets, traffic lights, or car license plates. Moreover, when they enter a new environment, they can become exceptionally absorbed in these subjects. But why does this happen? Based on what we discussed earlier, we can make an educated guess. First, since social interaction is extremely challenging for them, many autistic children redirect their energy into various areas of interest. Any interest can serve as a self-regulating method to replace the social interactions they fear. Therefore, as everyday conversations are full of variables and unpredictability, continuously discussing familiar and interesting topics can provide a sense of control, serving as a comfortable starting point for social interaction and reducing anxiety and fear. From a certain perspective, autistic children are quite clever. They always manage to find self-consistent coping strategies. Some parents or teachers may think that these interests make it even harder for autistic children to integrate into social groups. Therefore, they often attempt to deter the child's interests or redirect their attention, hoping the child will develop more socially conventional and diverse hobbies. Unfortunately, disrupting their established coping strategies only leaves them feeling more lost. The author provides a different perspective. They believe the primary task is not to obstruct but to use the child's interests as a starting point. First, establish trust with the child and make them feel that their interests are understood and respected. Use this as a starting point to gradually involve the child in activities or conversations that help them integrate with others and into society. The book mentions a child named Eddie, who was in the 4th grade. His teacher noticed that he had zero interest in standardized classroom assignments. Instead, he was passionately spending a lot of time meticulously inspecting the license plates in the school parking lot and enthusiastically recording different plates and car models. If an inattentive teacher had encountered this, they might not have paid much attention. If a teacher who didn't understand autistic children had intervened, they might have sternly prohibited this unusual behavior, compelling Eddie to return to the classroom and complete assignments, thus missing an excellent intervention opportunity. The author suggests that Eddie's teacher could try to harness his special interest in the parking lot to spark his interest in classroom assignments. So, a teacher helped Eddie develop a learning plan. Eddie first took photos of every car and license plate in the school parking lot. Then, with the teacher's assistance, he paired each car with its owner and proceeded to interview the car owner, asking about their hobbies, marital status, and the number of children they had, among other things. This plan continued for some time. Now, let's see the results. With the encouragement of his teacher, Eddie organized the collected photos and interview records into a PowerPoint presentation and gave a report to the class. A child who initially lacked motivation for learning and struggled with social communication was now completely engrossed in this project. He interacted with the teacher and strangers, gathered information, wrote reports, and presented them to his classmates. Eddie's parents were astonished. This was something they had never imagined. You see, although the interests of autistic children can sometimes be challenging for others, they often present excellent opportunities for intervention. Carefully consider these interests as strengths rather than pathological expressions of autism. These special interests can serve as bridges for them to build relationships with others and even become promising career choices in the future. The author frequently mentions the case of Stanford James, who had an intense childhood fascination with trains. He would spend long hours observing passing trains. Instead of discouraging him, his mother embraced it, and she became an expert in various complex transportation systems, routes, and schedules. When he grew up, Stanford found a job that perfectly aligned with his passion. He worked for Microsoft, helping customers find transportation routes and schedules based on their needs. Not only did he display outstanding attention to detail, focus, and responsibility, but he also earned the annual Outstanding Employee Award. You see, respecting a child's special interests can yield abundant rewards. Microsoft has a program that employs autistic individuals and provides them with professional support. A young person with autism who is passionate about computer coding can find meaningful work at Microsoft. These children who come from the stars cease to be burdens on their families as they grow up. Instead, they become valuable talents who can create value. Alright, let's take a look at the last aspect of autistic behavior, repetitive behaviors, often referred to as stereotyped behaviors. These stereotyped behaviors essentially involve repetitive actions. For instance, autistic children may engage in echolalia, where they endlessly repeat words or phrases they've heard from others. They might also perform seemingly meaningless actions, such as waving their hands in front of their eyes, rocking their bodies back and forth, or spinning in place. Additionally, they may insist on arranging objects in specific orders or eat the same dish from the same restaurant during mealtime. All of these are manifestations of stereotyped behaviors. Let's delve into echolalia as an example. Many parents initially suspect autism when they notice their child's unusual way of responding to others. Instead of using their own words, these children tend to echo what others have said. For instance, if a mother asks, "Do you want to go out and play?" the child might repeat the exact phrase multiple times, like, "Do you want to go out and play? Do you want to go out and play?" It's not just about repeating what they've heard in the moment, anything can become material for the child's echoing. Video clips they've watched, subway ad slogans, or even fragmented phrases used by their parents during arguments, all can be subjects of repetition. In daily life, many people might refer to this kind of echoing language as senseless, or label these peculiar behaviors as pathological traits of autism. Many parents worry that persistent echolalia could hinder their child's social interactions. However, the author believes that echolalia serves many practical functions for autistic children. The author is confident in this belief because they have observed autistic children since 1975, aiming to understand the role of echolalia in the communication and language development of autistic children. They found that sometimes, words that children hear while in a state of extreme excitement, distress, or joy can become the source of their echolalia. It appears that autistic children use echoing to associate the words with the emotional and situational context of when they heard them. Once, the author was invited to provide advice to a young autistic girl at a school. When the author attempted to sit beside her to understand her situation, the girl suddenly became very frightened and repeatedly said, "Broken glass, broken glass." The author was perplexed and immediately checked the girl's hands to see if she was injured. At this point, the teacher reassured the girl, saying, "Don't worry, she's a good person who's just here to visit today." The girl gradually calmed down. Later, the author learned that the girl had been scratched by broken glass on the playground several years ago. Since then, she used broken glass to express her anxiety and fear. Sometimes, children might use echolalia as a form of response. For instance, whenever the teacher scolded David for not following classroom rules, he would walk in circles around the classroom and repeatedly say with strong negative emotions, "No door slamming, no urinating on the wall." In reality, he was responding to the teacher in his own way, conveying, "I understand the teacher's reprimand, and I acknowledge that what I did was wrong." This is because what he was doing now, like slamming doors and urinating on the wall, resembled the incorrect actions that were not allowed in the classroom. In most cases, if we listen attentively and observe carefully, we can realize that these children are indeed communicating, they are just doing it in their unique way. Sometimes, they are confirming their understanding, other times they are practicing what they want to say, and sometimes it's because these sounds help them calm down. In any case, this language is not entirely without purpose. Although each child's developmental process and pace vary, as time goes on, when children develop their creative language systems, the occurrence of echolalia may gradually decrease. Recognizing and understanding the function of echolalia is crucial. Equally important is helping children learn more creative language and more standardized forms of communication. How can this be achieved? Firstly, when communicating with children, you can incorporate some supportive gestures and then use language as an auxiliary tool for comprehension. Try to break down the child's echolalia into smaller word or phrase fragments. Let's take an example. When a parent tells their daughter to go to the fridge to get milk and cookies, the child is likely to repeat this sentence in response. At this point, the parent can actually divide the entire sentence into several segments, using their finger to point to the fridge and then saying in segments, "Get milk, open the box, take the cookies." Another method involves using visual aids like photos or images to assist in spoken language, reducing the occurrence of echolalia. Most autistic individuals tend to use visual means to express and understand language, not just auditory and verbal methods. We can leverage this tendency to minimize echolalia. For instance, the book mentions a middle school student named Ilya who, when her anxiety levels increased, would stand up in class and sing the theme song from The Lion King at the top of her lungs. Later, the teacher discovered that, aside from singing, Ilya also enjoyed drawing characters from The Lion King. So the teacher prepared a drawing board. This way, when Ilya felt anxious, she could replace disturbing others by singing with drawing. Now, due to time constraints, this book concludes here. Today, we've followed the author to uncover the truth behind what are considered pathological manifestations of autistic children. So what is this truth? In simple terms, the so-called autistic behaviors are not entirely irregular, obsessive, or chaotic. Instead, they are coping strategies that autistic individuals employ to understand the world and attempt to communicate rationally and adaptively with others. Simply understanding these behaviors might not be enough. Many people concerned about autism want to know the answer to another question: what methods can truly help autistic children overcome their challenges? To help children with autism thrive, many parents instinctively seek out authoritative figures, sometimes trying to find experts from all over the world. However, they overlook one expert who is the most suitable for their child, themselves. The author believes that experts may know more about autism, but nobody knows their child better than the parents. No expert's viewpoint or insight can replace the judgment of parents who are attentive to their child's every need. This isn't meant to put pressure on parents, nor is it to suggest that professional help isn't needed. Quite the opposite, it's about instilling confidence in parents. Many parents miss the ideal intervention period claimed by experts and subsequently feel guilty, blaming themselves for potentially impacting their child's entire life. But as far as children are concerned, their growth and development hold tremendous potential. As a mother who herself has autism once said, children come first, and then autism comes later, not the other way around. If parents have confidence in the growth of typical children, they should have the same confidence in the growth of autistic children. Listen, observe, accompany your child, gaze at the stars together, and protect each unique spark of confidence. Besides what we've discussed today, there is much more practical content in this book. For example, the author also explores topics like when is the right time to tell a child they have autism, and which is better for autistic children, mainstream classes, special education classes, or private schools. If you're interested in these questions, I recommend reading the original book for a deeper understanding. Well, that's all for today. Share this book with your friends for free, so they can also join you in the world of Children from the Stars. Congratulations, you've completed another book. Thank you for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel. Like and share it with your family and friends. Wisdom is worth spreading, paving the way for a brighter future. Thank you, and goodbye.